Aymen, welcome to the Leanpub launch video for Generative AI for the rest of us, Your Future Decoded. I was wondering if you could take a moment just to talk a little bit about yourself, who you are, about your book, what it's about, and who it's for.
Yeah, sure. Sure, Len. Thanks for having me. So I'm a software engineer, basically, and I'm like a trainer at the same time, and I'm writing books, giving training online and offline training also. So basically, what I'm doing is around learning, e-learning, teaching, etc. So yeah, so that's what I'm doing. And for the book, so the title of the book already gives us a hint. So it's called Generative AI for the Rest of Us. So first of all, it's about generative AI, but for the average person. So it's a book that tries or that simplifies basically complex technical AI concepts into clear and understandable terms, using metaphors, using analogies and real-world examples. It also try to give or gives a 360-degree view on of this technology. So, for example, from the fundamentals techniques to the advanced algorithms and how everything works, basically, and it covers different aspects of the technology of the generative AI technology, including its history, the most common models, its applications, and the relationship, for example, between AI, economy, and geopolitics. So there are also different chapters or other chapters about the ethical, the geopolitical, the ecological, and the regulatory impacts of AI. So that's why I was saying that it's a 360-degree view of this technology. So in reality, there are many questions that I'm answering, or at least trying to answer in this book, including, like I said, the market and the economy questions. So, for example, one of the questions about the market or related to the market is why China is at the point, for example, of becoming a leader in AI. Basically, the actual leader is the US right now. And why at the same time the global markets and the supply chain of semiconductors are a very complex topic from a geopolitical point of view or perspective. But there are also different parts that are more practical than the geopolitical aspects. For example, how to increase your productivity using advanced prompt engineering techniques. So it's not about giving prompts already or prompts that are ready to use. No, it's not about this. It's about giving what researchers have found so far about the best or the advanced techniques like shoe-shot learning, for example, general knowledge prompting, etc. And the technical aspects also treats different other aspects, like, for example, the difference between two schools of thoughts or two visions about AI. So the first one, for example, is called symbolism, and the second one is called connectionism, and there is one that is more Darwinian than the other, and the other is more Newtonian. So I'm trying to explain in simple terms what are the differences between those two schools and how they can work together. Basically, they are actually working together in ChatGPT, for example, or other advanced tools. I'm also explaining how generative AI basically works in reality, how models like GPT-4 were trained and how they are working. What are also the most common applications of generative AI? So there are many applications, but I'm treating many, I'm discussing many of them. But for example, if I take the example of healthcare, so AI is used in healthcare basically to do many things, but one of the most interesting things is the drug discovery, and I'm discussing how AI is reducing the time of drug discovery from a long 15 years to 46 days. So that's very interesting, basically, to discover facts like this. And in reality, AI can create even new forms of protein. So that means basically that it can even create new forms of lives that didn't or don't exist in this life, because that the protein that AI can create or generative AI can create does not exist in life. So I'm discussing also the ethical impact. So what if AI can, for example, create a new form of life that we can never control, for example, etc. So there are many other dystopian scenarios that I'm discussing in the book, like, for example, the dead internet theory or the end of humanity with the rise of artificial general intelligence. So these scenarios are not just science fictions because they are basically supported by many specialists, like, for example, Jeffrey Hinton, which is called by many people the godfather of AI. And I'm taking different quotes from different people and different opinions from even people who work at OpenAI about the future and the impacts and the real impacts and dangers of AI in the future. I'm also debunking some myths about AI and answering other questions, like, for example, will AI take your job? So there are basically a list of jobs that AI can take, etc. So, so it's all about answering many questions in simple terms.
Yeah, no, though that's such a great description, and it's such a great idea for a book. I mean, taking this sort of 360-degree view. I mean, going into history, like, for a lot of people, AI just kind of like popped into their existence with ChatGPT, and it's like, no, there's a long history there, and that's important to understand where it came from and and then why there was this moment when it popped into our lives. There's all this geopolitics that you can talk about. There's all this practicality, like what's this prompt engineering I hear about, and how can I use that to affect my life? What are the potential impacts on our existence, like through synthetic biology and things like that? But putting it all together in one view, and specifically, how's it going to impact my life? Well, there's a list of jobs that might at least change dramatically, and one should be aware of these things. So the book is Generative AI for the Rest of Us, Your Future Decoded. It's a really good book. I recommend it to anyone who's interested in this topic and how it's going to affect all of us. So thank you very much, Aymen, for taking some time out of your day to talk to all of us about your really great new book.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.